Welcome to this episode of the Conscious Business Coffee Break, where we take a few moments to explore what's happening in the conscious business movement, expand your awareness, and encourage your efforts in conscious business. Greetings, everyone. I'm Stephen Donaco of the Conscious Business Enterprise, a division of Humanities team. And today on the program, we're talking about the virtue of having friends at work. And today's topic was inspired by a headline that I saw on uh, the Marketplace website called "What's the Downside of Making Friends at Work?" And I sort of had a reaction to that um, because why wouldn't we want to have friends at work? And uh, I think my reaction probably was more around why would an employer uh, discourage friendship at work? So it got me curious to check out the piece. It's actually a podcast, but there's a excerpt of the transcript that's also available on the page, and I'll put the link to it in the comments to this video when I'm done. But in any case, the this was done. It was a study that was done by the Wharton School, and essentially the gist of it is that workplace friendships could have negative effects for a company, especially in the age of social media, according to a study published in the Academy of Management Review. So there's the admission that workplace relationships affect productivity and work culture, and there's the factor of how to navigate friendships in complicated situations, particularly if there's a boss and a supervisor, or rather a boss and a subordinate who are friends, and how does that play out, and how does that look, and how does that work in the workplace? And then the recognition that social media can increase or exacerbate any of these dynamics, whether positive or negative, that are at play in the workplace. So if you've got so the transcript goes on to say that if you've got a friend that you've been spending a lot of time with, that person can distract you from the other things you're trying to do at work. And I think we've probably all have experienced this situation um, in our workplaces where we just water cooler talk, or you go out for a coffee with somebody. Uh, One place where I had worked, there was a coffee shop literally right across the street from the main entrance, so it tended to be a hangout place for a lot of people. Uh, and I would also say that it was a meeting place for a lot of people. So people who weren't just needed to get out of the office for a bit for a change of scenery might have meetings at the coffee shop instead of in a conference room. So there's that aspect to it that I think it's important for us to be aware of. Like we don't need to be trapped, in the office building all day. The other issue is clicks, right? So people who uh, like-minded, like-hearted, like attitude, who come together, and it's almost sort of like a high school or junior high mentality that people hang out in cliques, and if you're not part of the clique, you're not included, and you're excluded, and people can feel excluded from the clique. And whenever you have that kind of dynamic in a workplace, particularly if it involves a manager and a subordinate, it could breed envy and resentment. And then social media, of course, as I mentioned at the beginning, it can exacerbate some of these impacts, some of these dynamics. It can give a lot more visibility to the clicks, for instance. So I soaked all this in, and I came up with a couple of thoughts and reflections on this article. Uh, and I would say, as conscious professionals, so this is the conscious business coffee talk. So, I'm coming to you as someone who has evolved and expanded my own consciousness through my career, and I know we all have. I don't. I know you wouldn't be interested in watching this if you weren't. So, as conscious professionals, we know that self-awareness is the key to showing up authentically in all of our work relationships. So whether it's coworker to coworker, um, a coworker who also happens to be a friend, a manager, a subordinate, or any combination of these. Right. So our own self-awareness is really key to how we show up. And a couple of tips that I would offer, if they're not already evident to you, is one is to refrain from the temptation to obsess over social media. Um, it really, I was grateful for this piece because it really it woke me up to the fact that social media does have such a strong personal impact on our relationships with other people. Because the way I use social media is a little bit different. I use it primarily for my professional activities. So I don't, you won't find a whole lot of personal stuff about me in terms of like me on vacation or what I had for lunch. I don't post those kinds of things, and I really use it more for just communicating about my professional life. But I, but I realize that people are using it extensively to publicize their personal lives, and it exacerbates sort of that junior high dynamic if you're not being self-aware and using it. So I say refrain from the temptation to obsess over social media and to follow somebody to the extent where it causes you upset. Um, Refrain from gossip, and this is something that's very easy for any of us or all of us to get wrapped up in, gossiping about others. And this obviously can be done on social media, but of course this can be done face to face. And this is the kind of stuff that happens around the water cooler as well. So refrain from gossip. Be aware of your time, meaning be aware of the time that you're spending. So if you have a friend at work, and I've had friends at work, many of them, and I've gone out to get a cup of coffee with those friends. I've gone out to lunch with those friends at work. And I could say that all of us, we're always aware of our time in the sense that, okay, I know I've got a meeting to get back to it once we're done eating lunch. So I'm being mindful of the time. If I go for a coffee break with somebody across the street, I know I have a meeting coming up in 30 minutes. So I'm being aware of my time. So being aware of your time that you spend in these relationships and the time that you require to get your work done. So if you find that uh, socializing with your friends at work is causing you to stay late night after night, I mean, that's a self-awareness required. It's a self-awareness exercise or a self-awareness opportunity to be mindful about how you're spending your time, and then be compassionate. So understanding that these different relational dynamics are at play, and they all have different developmental levels, right? So there will be the adolescent type of relational dynamics, the cliques and so forth, and there will be mature relationships as well. And to be compassionate with all of it, to just be compassionate with people where they're at. And I would bring in one of the four agreements of Don Miguel Ruiz here and say, don't take anything personally. So if you're sensing that you're being left out of a clique at work, well, is it really that important for you to be in it? And and granted, maybe there's some career opportunity you might feel you're missing by not being in a clique. Um, and is it okay just to let that go and understand that the other ways that you are being and the other ways that you are showing up at work will have just as much impact, if not more impact, on the growth of your own career? And just trusting in your process of being a conscious professional at work. So I'll leave you there with that to ponder over the weekend. Enjoy your friendships over the weekend and enjoy your friendships next week when you get back to work. So we will see you again on Wednesday of next week, 9 a.m. U.S. Central Time, for another edition of the Conscious Business Coffee Break. Have a good weekend, everyone.